Ben, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Phil, and hello everybody, and really great to be speaking to you today. I'm going to quickly share my screen. So I've got some top tips for you. To be honest with you, wasn't Tim absolutely fantastic? I feel that you're already pretty much on your way with all of those fantastic insights to developing that winning mindset, and the stuff he said around imposter syndrome. I couldn't agree with more. So hopefully you've got some fantastic tips already. But what I'm going to be doing with you guys today is just get you thinking about a few different things and get you thinking ahead for this experience, for your applications, and also as you start your early career. And I've basically, I see this hopefully as a bit of a top 10 tips from probably the 6.5 years that I've been at Bright Network now. It's been a long old while. I've been advising students for that length of time, but I thought I'd put it all together and go for my best bits of advice around this general topic of being in that place where you feel that you can set yourself up for winning. So, yep, 10 thoughts, actionable tips, very random order. Try and take notes, but I will also share the slides as well. So broadly speaking, when you talk about winning mindset, I think a lot of the business, if the buzzword in the business world is growth mindset, and I saw a lot of definitions of this. A lot of companies have it as their value, actually, and I put it in front of a mountain because any quote in front of a mountain obviously means that it must be valid. But it's people that believe that their most basic abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. Brains and talent are just the starting point. And then this view creates a love of learning and a resilience that is essential for great accomplishment. And basically, you could be the most naturally gifted or naturally talented person, but if you don't put the hours in, you don't work, and you aren't curious, you don't want to learn, ultimately you're going to fall behind people. And I think this idea of having true growth mindset can put you above and put you into that kind of top 25% quartile, because broadly speaking, a lot of people don't fully embrace it and rely on talents that they've built up. And I think Tim so eloquently talked about it earlier that if you have to work hard and you're maybe not quite as good to start with, often those people are typically end up being better if they have the right attitude, because they've had to work hard. Like, for instance, dyslexia and dyspraxia, things that I've suffered from, actually being able to having to develop and learn to write with struggling when I first started has definitely put me in good stead and made me a better proofreader, a better writer, purely because of the dedication that I need to put in, because it just didn't come as naturally for me. Right, so 10 top tips, 10 things to think about to get you in a place where you can put in fantastic applications, you can start your career, and you can be in that winning mindset. First of all, something that I would encourage everyone to do, so whether it's this evening or whether it's over the next few weeks, is really understand where your skill sets lie. Ultimately, what I do is I would make a little table. This is actually probably like one for a team, but you get the idea. Look at what you're great at, what you're good at, what you're okay at, and what you're bad at. And then also, what do others think? So I would look at maybe what skills you typically see on job descriptions, or what skills are going to be more broadly good for the working world, whether it's project management, public speaking, which can go across any sector, and rank yourselves at it. Also, talk to others. It might be a bit of a weird thing to do with your mates, but hopefully you've got a couple of close friends, possibly family, and get an idea of how they see things. Because ultimately, you can be either your worst self-critic on certain things and rank yourself too low, or even maybe slight delusions of grandeur possibly and rank yourself a little high. But whatever it is, get this kind of table together. You can really see where you think your skills are, and possibly there's areas, bunches where you're really strong. It's quite difficult to be objective, but I really do encourage you to give it a go. And remember, and as we talked about earlier, is that you can't be good at everything. So really, really work out what is the most important objectively for you. So if you are going into a career like, for instance, you're going to be a software developer, for instance, and you're not very good at public speaking, potentially, maybe not, I don't know for sure, but potentially speaking in front of large audiences isn't going to be something that you're going to be doing on the job. And sure, you might want to get a bit better at public speaking, but is it really the most important? And then also I'd focus on where you already have some strengths. I always think it's better to focus on things where you're maybe okay at, not great at, okay at, and make yourself really good at. Because if you're focusing always on things that you're bad at and make yourselves okay at, you're not becoming specialist in those areas. So you think about this T-shaped person across the T, across the bar at the top. You want to be okay, good at a number of different things. And then the I of the T, you want to be a specialist in a couple of areas. So as I say, start with the okay things and move them to the great and good areas. And that's how I'd process my development. Having a process for development, very important. Keep it really simple. Put 2 hours aside per week. I'm sure I've got a history. If you're at university doing a history degree, you definitely have 2 hours. And even if you've got a fairly labor intensive degree with lots of contact time, 100% make sure you carve out that time and really do it. Hold yourself accountable for it, and maybe just structure it in a really simple way. One podcast, 40 minutes of reading the business book you're reading, one online lesson or module for 40 minutes. Get in that routine. And as I say, set yourself some quarterly or monthly goals to make sure that you're going through things. And actually, I'm sure everyone on this call on Netflix, you sometimes go for one episode, think you're going to be there for 45 minutes, and about 6 hours later, you've watched a whole series and it's 4 a.m. in the morning. If you're really loving and passionate about the development, that 40 minutes of reading could easily get into an hour and a half. The podcast, the one episode can be turned into 2 or 3. But as I say, I think it's keeping that regularity of your development, but not overburdening yourself with all the great fun and academics and the job hunts that you need to do throughout university. Everyone always asks me for book recommendations, so I thought I would chuck in a couple of quick ones. And as I say, you will get the slides if you miss any of this, but Good Working Habits, Tools of Titans, a very American book, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is really, really good. Leadership, Start with the Why, Simon Sinek. You might have seen his TED Talks, a lot of people have. Or Sheryl Sandberg has just stepped down from Facebook. Lean In is a very good book as well. If you just want to understand the plumbing of business, basically, a lot of the sectors that we are doing the internship experience on are kind of, I would describe as city focused. Chris Stokes' book is kind of the Bible for that. Problem solving, entrepreneurship, 100% recommend Masters of Scale. And a bit more general, and a lot of people have read it, but Sapiens for understanding people and how we interact. I think that's a really good book. So if you're stuck on where to start developing, pick up these books, audio books. A lot of these people have podcasts as well. So get on with those. So set yourself up to do the best work. And the starting point with that is working out which job, which sector is right for you. Quite complex. The good news is that you're well ahead of everyone else who's not doing internship experience UK. Obviously, you've picked one sector that you might know you're interested in, you might think you're interested in, you might be exploring. But of course, you can do on demand, do all the other sectors as well to get a good picture of the sector or job roles which might be right for you. Again, this is something very practically that you can do in your own time. But if you're unsure, you're not really sure what you're enjoying, what I would say is really understand where your strengths are and where you're getting the enjoyment out of things. And you can do this quite formulaic thing just to really get a sense of where that lies. So step 1, list all of the work experience, project work, positions of responsibility that you've got, and then list the key tasks that you had. So not what the group did or what you did as a company, really focused on what your tasks were, what your responsibilities were. And then work out whether you enjoyed it. So put a little number out of 5, let's say, on 3 different criteria: how much you enjoyed that task, how good you were at it, and how easy you believe it would be for you to improve. So hopefully you should have a number of different tasks that have lots of 4 and 5s across the board. And also, hopefully those are kind of clustered. There might be certain things that you did that are quite similar to other tasks, so you can start seeing patterns of what you are good at. And then, which sounds like the complex part, but hopefully fairly simple, is do the research on each sector, speak to people in the sectors, get hands-on like this week, and be honest with yourself around the work that you're going to enjoy. You will end up doing better work in that way. If you can really go like, actually, you know what, from my experiences, I know that I'm going to like doing this, this, and this. And broadly speaking, yeah, sure, it's not perfect, this job. No job is perfect, exact task you want to do. But I know that with this job, that task and that task, I'm going to really enjoy doing because I've had experience of it before. And ultimately, if there's loads of red flags about a sector, but, you know, through friends or through family, you think, oh, yeah, that's what I should be doing. Really, really take that step back and evaluate whether it's right for you. And finally, also evaluate your values. So really, really recommend, if you haven't done it already, you're doing the career path test on the Bright Network website. It gives you some sector recommendations, but it also shows you what's important to you. I did it myself. I'm not 100% sure whether I did it fully or I was just clicking through, but clearly recognition is important to how I answered this, and altruism is slightly less, but it gives you a sense of what you value, and then you can match your values to the companies that you might work for. Moving on to point 4, and this is my sort of it's getting a bit more application focused. And broadly speaking, this tip is think about the audience when you're going through applications. Basically, you should be spending your time working out what employers want you to say, not what you want to tell them. And I think it goes from whether you're doing comedy or whether you're writing a book or whatever you're doing, work in marketing as I do, you're always thinking about the audience first. What do they want? Not what you want to show them, but what do they want? And notoriously, I think students miss the mark a little bit. And hopefully this next slide will help that. So this is from our annual research. We asked you guys, students, what you think graduate employers value most in candidates. So you see good academics, existing internships or previous internships as key for getting graduate level employment, and stuff like leadership skills, resilience being at the bottom. So we went out to lots of big employers, of which you'll be meeting many of them over the next 2.5 days. And we asked them, what do they actually value most in their candidates? And as you can see, the colors show where the differences are vast. Passion for the business, passion is so important. Resilience, and if you think about it, you guys possibly don't value resilience that much, but given the last 2 years we've had, developing and showing that you've been able to be resilient is so important when you enter the working world. Unfortunately, and I know this all too well from my first couple of years in the working world, you do make a few mistakes along the way, and it's actually the people that can learn from them, bounce back quickly, and drive themselves forward. You're showing that resilience are going to be the ones that succeed, not so much the ones with the most natural talent, as we discussed earlier. And then my final point on this, existing industry experience. Don't be put off, don't be perturbed if you haven't done a formal internship and you're looking at your mates or your peer or the person that you don't really like who does your course, who seems to be getting all the internships and stuff like that. But don't be put off. As you can see, all of these top 5 skills employers are looking for can be built from anything that you do, can be built from going to events, they can be built from doing job at Tesco's, job behind the bar, really having that kind of business and commercial acumen. So never ever be put off about going into a sector without the industry experience. Obviously, you know, if there's technical skills part of the job, that's a bit different. But stuff like, you know, consulting or banking or law and stuff like that, yeah, sure, someone might have a law degree, but if you've got the commercial mindset, that goes a long way. So as you saw on the last slide, passion is everything. And there's a number of ways to show passion. I think getting that face-to-face or virtual time with an employer, being able to ask them personal questions, being able to see them like speak is really important, because it gives it something personal to you. Also seeing the similarities between what you're doing and maybe at university and what they're doing. Really good to look at companies on social media for that reason. But the question you will get asked at interview is, why do you want to work in this sector? Why do you want to work in this role? Or why do you want to work in this company? Let's not overcomplicate things. Here's how we're going to answer this question. First one, I was initially interested because ... fill it out yourselves in your own time. After being initially interested, I explored this interest when I did this: join a society, you know, read up on something, take a little course, whatever it might be. I realized through exploring this interest or doing this thing that it was a match for me because of these three key reasons. I am this, and therefore this works well for me. And going back to the tip from number one, point number one, this will help this one as well. And then also, companies are not naive. They know you're going to be exploring different industries. So tell them, I looked at other sectors, but they weren't as closely matched to me because of this. And then finally, going from the sector level or the role level down to the company. So each company is going to have competitors. And I'm going to tell you that these competitors, on the face of it, on the surface, might look very, very similar. Similar services, similar structures, and things like that. But it's so important to look at maybe the development they offer, the culture, their values, what countries they're in, anything across the board, what they're sharing on social media, and really make sure that you're aligned or you've got things which you feel aligned to them. And you can say, actually, you're doing this, which is your competitors aren't. And that's what really hooked me in as well. That's an A-star answer. And all of a sudden, you're highlighting that passion, not just for the industry, but for their company as well. So passion isn't just about being passionate about the sector. If your CV is, let's say you want to go to bank, your CV is full of banking stuff, which should be. And then in the interest section, it sort of says reading the FT and trading and stuff like that. A lot of employers want to see the rounded person. They want to see your kind of outside passions come out. And I'll give you a couple of examples of this. So a lady who was a member a few years ago and joined one of the big investment banks, set up the UCL Beyonce Society. Nothing to do with asset management, trading, banking. But when she had her partner interview with the most senior person she'd be interviewed by, they spent 10 minutes at the start of the interview talking about this. She was passionate about it. I'm not sure whether the partner at this big bank was as passionate, but he could tell by doing something around her passion that she had those other interests, and actually turned her passion into something which was quite fun that she could share with other people. And ultimately, people like to see it. And from myself, I've been into gardening for many a year, but recently, after stopping drinking, got a bit more into it. Started posting on LinkedIn. Also set up an Instagram channel, which you can see there, and please follow away. But actually, you know what? No one gives a stuff most of the time, but especially for the first 15 minutes about what I'm doing at Bright Network, all of the stuff we're doing in the marketing department. They want to talk to me about their lime trees or their petunias or everything like that. And actually, by building those rapport with people, whoever it might be, whether it's clients or interviewees or interviewers, ultimately you can start getting that human connection, and ultimately they're more likely to hire you. Resilience is more important than you think. As it says below with a very nice diagram, resilience is like a muscle. You can develop it. And I think there's 4 ways that I would think about building resilience. And as I say, as you saw from the slide at the start with the employers, students don't value resilience students are not thinking that employers value resilience, but they really, really do. So really do think about it. First of all, put yourself outside your comfort zone. Put your hand up for things. For me personally, it was very much when I started Bright Network, presenting and doing all that side of things. Hopefully I'm doing an all right job today. But all it was down to was me putting my hand up for every opportunity, being petrified. And back in the day, it wasn't even Zoom calls. It was very much in person. And then all of a sudden you build a wider comfort zone and you start seeking out opportunities to get outside your comfort zone the more and more that you do it. Have a good attitude to understanding failure. A lot of people look at failure and then they park it. They don't utilize the learnings from it. They may not even go back to the thing that they failed at once. If you can get a really good attitude to seeking to understand failure and coming back stronger, that's a really good sign that you're building resilience. Also, everyone gets in crisis situations. And I think in your early career, that's going to happen. There's going to be times where you're unsure, and you'll know within yourself from previous crisis situations, let's say, how you deal with it. I think putting in some thought about how you would deal with it in future is really important, especially in the work setting, because ultimately you don't want to come across as a nervous wreck. You want to feel calm under pressure when those situations arise. So definitely put the thought in there. And finally, change your attitude towards feedback, which leads me nicely on to point 7, which is seek out and action feedback. So yes, so feedback is something that people don't like getting. Earlier in my career, and even today sometimes I struggle a bit with receiving feedback. But ultimately the best people, the people with the growth mindset, will seek it out, have the uncomfortable conversations, and then put in plans to action it. My 5 top tips for receiving feedback: ask for it, get on the front foot. If you're having feedback when you're not expecting it, that is a potential time where you could be quite negative, you could react quite negatively for it. Whereas if you ask for it proactively, you get on the front foot, you're expecting the feedback, you're ready to hear it. Good top tip. Active listening and ask questions to fully understand it. Look like you're listening and always ask questions throughout to go, just to clarify things. It also shows the person that gives the feedback, you're attentive, you're learning, and you're ready to go. Don't give an initial reaction, especially if you're feeling a bit tweaked by the feedback. Go away, reflect on it. It's always a bit better after you've had a bit of time to think it through. And then create an action plan to improve. And also, I would get the feedbacker, the person giving you feedback, involved in this action plan and make it timely. And the great thing is, what I do is I book in a future meeting with the feedback giver, probably let's say 3 months down the line. And then you've got a deadline that you need to stick to action those pieces of feedback. So whether it's working on presenting skills or potentially handling a situation not as well as you could, ultimately you then can do a little review on that piece of feedback and also talk through the steps that you've taken as well. And that's how I would really, really focus in on receiving feedback. And also, before you even do, you can gain better understanding of yourself, like do personality type tests, do the colors. There's loads of stuff online you can do on this, and I'll, as I say, share the deck in the own time. Bradley Wiggins on the screen, British Olympian. Dave Brailsford, the UK and UK Olympic coach for cycling. Britain have dominated cycling for a little while now, less so now, but over the last 15 years, definitely so. And this theory of marginal gains, which is basically all the little things that you can improve add up to big gains. True inspiration, occasionally it happens, is sometimes hard to come by. But if you're always looking at how you can problem solve, find solutions to small problems, or develop things that little bit, that 0.5%, that 1%, all of a sudden you can work on all these small things. And once you get somewhere, you'll actually add up all of those small wins and they will start making a big difference. And as I say, they were talking about cycling, they'd have the tires at the perfect temperature. They would train in perfect ways. There's a really good book called Will It Make the Boat Go Faster, which is actually not cycling, it's rowing, which talks highly about marginal gains as well. And then the reflection point of view. So there's this 80-20 rule that basically 80% of your results comes from the 20% of your effort. So once you've started making those gains, reflect on what's happened and prioritize where you think you're actually going to get results from. So focus in on that 20% and grow your time focusing in on what's working as well. Number 9, become solution focused. John Lennon, there's no problems, only solutions. And then approach problems in the right way. A little bit like this guy. Terukaru Kobayashi he looks like he's either a martial arts person or maybe a pop star that has enjoyed going to the gym a little too much. But no, he is the godfather of competitive eating, or more specifically, hot dog eating. And basically what he did when everyone else was trying to work out how do you eat more hot dogs in a certain specific amount of time, he flipped the problem and went, actually, how do you eat a hot dog quicker? Just one hot dog quicker. And so he worked out that actually, if you look like that, you're more likely to be able to eat quicker if you're muscly, if you're fit, if you're athlete. So he started training before. As you can imagine, most competitive hot dog eaters don't look like him. And then he also went like, right, I've got a cup of water and a hot dog. How do I eat the hot dog in the quickest way? So instead of eating the hot dog like how me and you would do it, he started taking the sausage out, eating that, dipping the bread in the water, and then that would allow him to eat it quicker. Ultimately, he smashed every record under the sun, not because he did anything that anyone else couldn't do. Anyone can train, anyone can dip bread in water, but he approached problems differently. And I encourage you to do that in the same way. So before any problem comes out in the working world, approach to the problem. You should ask yourself 5 key questions. Am I solving the right problem? A little bit like Kobayashi on the last slide. Is there any data or research out there to help me? And if there isn't, maybe you need to collect some. Ultimately, if you're being customer led or team led, you should really understand what maybe your customers think or what people think around you to be able to truly solve the problem. How have others approached this problem in the past? And talking about this kind of marginal gains piece, actually, if you're doing things slightly better than other people, ultimately, like that's how most businesses do really, really well. They come in and do things just ever so slightly better. Also, it's good to look at how people maybe have failed to approach this problem, not fall into the same pitfalls. What is the right first small step? What should I do first? And create a timeline of activity around problems. And then why am I solving this problem? As I said, I recommended the book, Simon Sinek. He's also got a TED talk on it, but always start with the why. Who are you solving this problem for? Why is it important that you solve this problem? My final top tip, we've got about 2 minutes left, is ask great questions. My psychology teacher, when I was A-level, said this: you can't know all of the answers, so just have great questions. And I think that piece of advice, well, given that 13, 14 years on, I'm still remembering it and talking about it, I think has held me in good stead. And what makes a great question? Ultimately, that sounds one of a very philosophical life questions, but 5 things to think about. Is it relevant to the person you're speaking to? So let's say at the end of an interview, if you're talking to a senior partner at an organization, probably asking them about the onboarding journey is probably something you could say for the HR people. So really think about who you're talking to and tailor your questions across a business. Do you really want to find this out? There's nothing worse for people across a business if you feel the person feels like they ought to ask the question and they don't really want to know the answer. Really make sure you want to find it out. How and will the answer support you? Again, whatever the answer, is it going to add to your knowledge? Can you find this out online? Again, this is really pertinent for the end of interview questions. If you can find something out online, just find out online and ask them questions about themselves, their person, how they've been able to develop in the role, what the development's like in the role for them. Ask stuff that you can't find out. So make sure you've done that research before going into any interview to make sure that you're asking the really good questions. And also, are you being curious about the business world? Are you showing that commercial awareness? It is so important and so key. And actually, one final example, I interviewed for a more senior hire. You wouldn't get this necessarily. And I set them a project, a presentation to give. And instead of giving them materials, I said to them, you can speak to me for 20 minutes before the presentation. Ask me any questions and I'll answer them so you can do your presentation. And I learned more from the questions they asked than the 40-minute interview I'd done with them in the past. And I knew which presentations were going to be good because they asked brilliant questions and then they went on to do brilliant presentations. If they didn't ask great questions, more often than not, the presentation was lacking. Those are my top tips. That was a whirlwind of half an hour. Phil, there might be time for one question possibly.
Let's try and make it a quick one, Ben. Sorry, because there's loads of questions. There's some really, really good ones here. The first one that came in, I think it's a really good question. So I sit down, do my list. I find I'm naturally good at something, but I have no passion for it. So I'm naturally good at eating hot dogs, but a career in hot dog eating turns me off. What do I do about that?
I think ultimately, if you're not going to be passionate about it, it's probably something that you can say, I've got in my back pocket. I can definitely do it. It's something that falls within my skill set. But I would try and pursue those ones that you're passionate about because ultimately it's a long old career, potentially 100,000 hours in, like, you know, in your working life. And, you know, it sounds maybe a bit woolly and a bit fluffy, but ultimately, if you enjoy your work, you'll get better at the stuff you enjoy, and ultimately you end up hating the thing that you do enjoy. So I'd go for that.
Super answer. Ben, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you so much for your insight and wisdom. Lots of good stuff, CV wise, interview wise, that we can take on. So thanks